could put you at risk for this?
I want to help people more than I ever have.
Erin Burnett out front on CNN.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hello everyone, I'm Zain Asher in New York and this is One World. Ukraine says that Russian forces are unleashing a savage assault on eastern Ukraine, carpet bombing a key region with a barrage of artillery, mortar and rocket attacks. One local official says that Moscow now controls 70% of Severodonetsk, a strategic city central to the Kremlin's overall strategy. And he claims that some government troops have retreated to, quote, more advantageous positions elsewhere. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is slamming Russia's indiscriminate bombardment, calling it insanity, following a strike on a chemical plant in Severodonetsk. Russian-backed forces blamed Ukrainian troops for the explosion. Germany's foreign minister is accusing Moscow of trying to extinguish civilization in the Donbass region. As the fighting rages on, Russia is warning a third country could get dragged into the conflict. It comes after the U.S. agreed to supply Ukraine with more advanced missile systems. During a press conference with the NATO chief in Washington just a short time ago, the U.S. Secretary of State played down those concerns.
The Ukrainians have given us assurances that they will not use these systems against targets on Russian territory. There is a strong trust bond between Ukraine and the United States, as well as with our allies and partners. President Biden was very clear with President Putin about what the United States would do if Russia proceeded with its aggression, including continuing to provide security assistance that Ukraine needs to defend itself against the Russian aggression.
CNN's Melissa Bell is in southeastern Ukraine for us, but first let me bring in Kylie Atwood, who's joining us live now from the State Department. So Kylie, let's just talk about weapons that the U.S. is sending. What is the difference between the weapons that the U.S. wants to send Ukraine and is going to send Ukraine versus the types of weapons that Ukraine believes that it truly needs in order to defend itself?
Well, this is all a matter of how far these weapons can go. And that is a concern, of course, because the United States doesn't want to give the Ukrainians weapons that could go too far into Russian territory, because then, of course, that could make this conflict even more escalatory in nature. What the Biden administration is saying is that they want to give Ukraine a stronger type of weapons so that they are able to more effectively defend themselves against these Russian aggressions, but they don't want to give them weapons that are going to, as the Secretary of State said, be used to target Russian territory. So the Ukrainians are essentially making the argument that they need any weaponry that is the most effective in this situation and can go the furthest. But our understanding is that the Biden administration is going to be giving them these systems that they want, but not necessarily with the range that they are capable of going, because they don't want this to become a more provocative, sharing of weapons. They want this to just shore up what Ukraine has already been able to do.
And Kylie, I want to bring in Melissa, who's been covering Severodonetsk. So, Melissa, just explain to us how much of a difference will these weapons that the U.S. is sending Ukraine, how much of a difference will it make to the outcome of the battle that is raging in the eastern part of the country?
Saying the communications are extremely poor here. because here in the Zaporizhzhia region, it is 3 out of the 5 districts of this greater region that have had communications cut entirely. And I think to your question, though, it explains the significance to Ukraine's armed forces of that announcement just made by Secretary of State Blinken, confirming the news that we'd had this morning, that some of those weapon systems, and I'm speaking here particularly of those long-range rocket systems, would be given within a range of 49 miles. And this place I'm speaking to you from, I think, tells a story of why they are so crucial to Ukraine's fight, why they've been asking for them for the course of the last few days. You have that long line between the territories currently held by Russian forces and the rest of Ukraine. Here in Zaporizhzhia, for instance, it is 30 miles down the Dnieper that the first Russian positions are. As I mentioned a moment ago, the communications are already extremely patchy. We have sirens going off fairly regularly here because it is the villages just to the south of Zaporizhzhia that are being shelled day and night by Russian artillery. And what Ukrainian armed forces, both the men on the ground, the head of the regional administration, military administration here have been telling us, but also Ukrainian military intelligence sources have been telling us for the last few days, is that the feeling within Ukraine is that at the moment Russian forces have the upper hand. What they believe is that by getting some of these long-range rocket systems, not simply a range that can hit targets of up to 49 miles, but also much more advanced, much more sophisticated in terms of the ability of the rockets, but also the munitions that the Biden administration have said they will now be providing to Ukraine to guide themselves towards their targets. Ukraine feels that that will help them in their fight against this very long line, along which part of their effort is on the back foot. We've seen that in Severodonetsk. Even now, that city that appears to be falling to Russian forces, Ukrainian armed forces mounting that counter-offensive to the south, and where I'm standing now, further along down the Dnieper, trying to get back that crucial city of Kherson, the only point that Russian forces have, the only city that they have to the west of the Dnieper River. That is the focus of their fighting. But for the last few days, there has been a sense here in Ukraine and all along this line that the advantage is to the Russian side. And I think that speaks to the points that were just made by Secretary of State Blinken, that we don't know how long this war is going to last. It could last for many more months. Right now it is in the hands of Russia to bring an end to this. And for the time being, all Washington can do is stand by the commitment President Biden had made loud and clear at the start of this, that they would be helping Ukraine where they could to defend themselves, Zane.
Yeah, and this idea that, according to Secretary Blinken, that when this war ends, it will be because of the negotiating table, nothing else. Melissa Bell, live for us there. Kylie Atwood, thank you both so much. All right, to Shanghai now, where crowds are back on the streets celebrating the easing of COVID-19 restrictions. After 2 months under a strict lockdown, a very strict lockdown, the government is finally allowing most residents to leave their communities. Many businesses are reopening and the transit system is back up and running. But a full return to normality could take time, with some restrictions staying in place for the time being. CNN's Selena Wang is live for us in Beijing. So the past few months have been incredibly traumatic for people living in Shanghai. And I think the scary thing is that, if more COVID cases are found, certain neighborhoods could go under lockdown at any moment.
That's exactly right. It's been such a traumatic few months, and this freedom, they're finally feeling this relief. Well, for some, it could be short-lived, because if a new COVID case is found, that community immediately goes back into lockdown. That person and all their close contacts go back into quarantine. So a mixture of emotions here. Also, some disbelief, because the days leading up to this moment, Zane, have been utter chaos.
Sprinting with shopping bags, residents racing to get out. After more than 2 months of a brutal citywide lockdown, Shanghai is finally cracking open the seal. The city's main train station packed with people trying to escape, but actually getting out of here is a treacherous journey. The city says it will fully resume transportation today. But earlier, people have been seen trekking miles across highways, dragging their luggage or strapping it to bikes. Even journeys of dozens of miles or more, not swaying their determination. The train station parking lot has become a campsite, some leaving days earlier than their departure time, terrified they could be locked down again if they stay at home. The masses outside the train station, a stark contrast to the rest of Shanghai. Hundreds of thousands still remain locked in. But even the lucky ones allowed out face a laundry list of restrictions. There are checkpoints everywhere.
No, this is definitely not freedom.
This Shanghai resident and her son, who wished to remain anonymous for fear of persecution from authorities, were finally allowed out after more than 80 days. Her only solace is seeing her son outside and smiling for the first time in a long time.
My child now has depression because of the lockdown. He started waking up at night and crying and shouting and saying there were people wearing masks in his bedroom, and he stopped eating.
That harsh reality miles away from what the government wants to show. Watch this state TV reporter pull the microphone and camera away during a live interview when the resident starts to complain about the lockdown. She says, "I've never lived through anything like this, being locked inside your home and not allowed to go out. What a big joke." Officials say the city will start returning to normal in June, but residents are doubtful.
So this does feel like endless nightmare.
Her freedom lasted less than a week. One COVID case was found near her, so she's back to lockdown. For over 2 months, Shanghai has had its freedom taken away, residents imprisoned at home or forced into quarantine centers like these. No one knows when this nightmare will fully end.
This entire report was censored on TV screens in China, and what I'm saying right now, in screens here, you are just seeing color bars on TV screens here in Beijing. The government in Shanghai, they have refused to even call this lockdown a, quote, lockdown, instead calling it, quote, static management. So there is some bitterness here that authorities have not acknowledged the suffering and the difficulties they've struggled with to get enough food and daily essentials and medical care. Countless heartbreaking stories of people being turned away, emergency patients being turned away from hospitals because of COVID policy. So there's frustration that there's been no acknowledgement of it. And this 2-month brutal lockdown has been a wake-up call to Shanghai that in authoritarian China, you could have your freedoms taken away in an instant, even in the country's wealthiest, most cosmopolitan city. There is no guarantee in China that this nightmare won't happen all over again. Zane?
Yeah, it's unimaginable to think about what people have been through there over the past couple of months. Lena Wang, live for us. Thank you so much. The Uvalde, Texas School District Police Chief has managed to evade media for days. Today, though, CNN exclusively caught up with and confronted him. Pete Arredondo, seen here outside his home earlier today, wearing his badge and gun, led the botched response to last week's massacre at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. Officials say it was Arredondo who decided not to immediately breach the locked classrooms where the shooter had holed up with children and teachers, choosing instead to wait for keys and tactical gear. Take a look at the interaction between CNN's Shimon Prokupecz today outside Arredondo's office.
About your decision and what the DPS director said.
How's it going?
Good, I'm Pete. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
I
you.
want to talk to you about the decision and what
Department we're doing, but just to let y'all know, and I just spoke with
I know you did. But
you're not bluffing me, are you?
No.
No.
Turn this way.
No, just so y'all know. Just so you all know, obviously, we're not going to release anything. We have people in our community being buried, sir. So we're going to be respectful.
I just want your reaction to
we're going to be
the director McGraw saying that you were responsible for the decision to go into that room. How do you explain yourself to the
We're going to be respectful to the family.
I understand that, but you have an opportunity to explain yourself to the parents.
And just so you know, we're going to do that eventually, obviously.
When?
And whenever this is done, we'll let the families quit grieving, then we'll do that, obviously. And just so everybody knows, we've been in contact with DPS every day. Just so you all know.
They say that you're not cooperating.
I've been on the phone with them every day.
But they say you're not cooperating. So just 2 seconds.
Just so you know, we've been talking to them every day.
What is your reaction?
Y'all have a good day.
What is your reaction, sir?
CNN's Shimon Prokupecz joins us live now from Uvalde. Shimon, excellent job holding his feet to the fire, trying to hold him accountable and ask those pressing questions there. But how much has public trust in the Uvalde Police Department been eroded in just the past week?
Well, it's been eroded a great deal here. Talking to people here in the community, talking to family members, they're having a hard time trusting what's coming from the police because of all the contradictions that we've been getting. So that's why this is sort of important. It's important for them to answer questions. The police chief has not been at any of the press conferences that the state police have been holding. He's not addressed any of our questions. We've not been able to reach him. So today we were able to see him leaving his home and then going to his house. And so that's where, to his office, and that's where we were able to ask the questions.
Shimon, I'm so sorry, I was having trouble with your audio there, but thank you so much for being with us. All right, still to come here, no sign yet of a verdict in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. We'll look at the societal impact of the case and what some say could be dangerous consequences.
Through investment in STEM schools, Egypt has committed to building a more diverse and inclusive workforce. They are encouraging women and girls across the country to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. By ensuring that they are not just represented, but are also empowered to thrive across all sectors, Egypt has demonstrated their commitment to investing in the country's youth and in the mission to achieve sustainable development goals.
Almost all carbon emissions come from industries that shape our world. But at Standard Chartered, we believe progress doesn't have to cost our planet. That's why we're mobilizing $300 billion to help our clients change the way they operate, accelerating the transition to a net zero world. Because where others see problems, we see potential. We're Standard Chartered, and we're here for good.
It's a mystery that gripped the world.
If you have Madeline, let her come home to her mummy, daddy, brother and sister.
A young girl's disappearance from a seaside resort.
Please give our little girl back.
15 years later, a major break.
Portuguese authorities have said that they have named a suspect.
CNN investigates.
So to be clear, the formal suspect is a convicted rapist and a known pedophile.
Missing Madeleine McCann. Saturday.
Heard it all before? But have you heard it like this?
The ultimate disruptor looks set to shake up our world. We really can't ignore the impact that this has. What can we do that explores a fresh angle? So let's untangle the players and political forces. The truth is a lot more complex. What's really going on?
Fast-paced news, in-depth reports, and fact checks from the perspective of The Global Brief with Bianca Nobilo. Tonight on CNN.
Welcome to The Lead. We begin with breaking news. The United States has plunged into a recession. We're seeing infections at an all-time high. What's your reaction to that? Here are the facts.
The Lead with Jake Tapper. Coronavirus. To get daily news updates in your inbox, sign up for the CNN newsletter. Coronavirus. Fact versus fiction.
At this hour, a jury in Fairfax, Virginia is deliberating the defamation case of actors Johnny Depp and Amber Heard for a third day. Depp is suing his ex-wife for $50 million and Heard is countersuing for $100 million. He claims Heard's 2018 op-ed in the Washington Post hurt his career. In it, she called herself a public figure representing domestic abuse. In her countersuit, Heard claimed she was defamed by Depp's lawyer, who called her abuse allegations a hoax. Trial watchers have consumed every minute of the 6-week trial, which had its share of compelling moments. Take a listen.
Johnny promised me he would ruin me, that he'd ruin my career, he'd take my life from me. Death was the only way out, and if I got out, this is what he'd do to me. He'd make me think of him every single day. He promised me global humiliation.
Have never in my life committed sexual battery, physical abuse, all these outlandish, outrageous stories of me committing these things.
Right, many of those commenting took on the trial took a side, but others spoke of the danger of such a serious topic being turned into entertainment. Actress Drew Barrymore called it a 7-layer dip of insanity and then apologized for the quip. Former Spice Girl Mel B says to look at this case as entertainment is damaging, referring to the seriousness of spousal abuse allegations. And Monica Lewinsky calls it courtroom porn, saying that no matter who wins the trial, we, the spectators, are all guilty. So is the sensationalism of this trial robbing it of its humanity? Let's bring in David Glass. He's a certified family law specialist with a PhD in clinical psychology. David, thank you so much for being with us. So what are your thoughts on this trial overall? In terms of just the overall sensationalism aspect of it and how it is basically being turned into entertainment, but also what your expectation is for deliberations in terms of how long that part could last and which way the verdict is likely to go at this point.
Yeah, the sensationalism portion of this trial is the unfortunate result of both parties throwing as much mud as they can at each other, trying to prove their case. But in the end, a defamation case isn't about all these awful things they've said about each other and all the awful things they claim the other has done. It comes down to very specific things that the jury has to look for. And that's where the jury is now. This deliberation is going to take some time because the jury has 6 weeks of testimony that they've taken notes on and physical exhibits that they have to review and 38 pages of jury instruction that they have to go through before they can come to a verdict either way or no way.
And when you think about, I mean, everyone has talked about the fact that nobody comes out of this looking good. Both of their careers are in shambles after this. But I think that Amber Heard, just according to public opinion at least, Amber Heard has emerged as the least sympathetic figure of the two. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a continuing cultural phenomenon where the pendulum swings. So for a while, the Me Too movement basically said we need to believe all women who come forward with abuse allegations. And that's a fair thing to do. But now the pendulum has swung the other way with people claiming that these abuse allegations are made up, or in this case, a hoax. And it just comes down to how many fans each of these parties has. While Amber Heard has $8 million followers on TikTok or social media, Johnny Depp has 18 million. And so that's the court of public opinion is on his side. I'm not sure the jury is going to follow public opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, audio evidence that sort of shows what some people have referred to as mutual abuse by the two of them as well.
That's right. This case comes down to what a Los Angeles family law judge used to say when he would say that Mother Teresa doesn't get married to Attila the Hun. These are both damaged people. They have their own specific flaws. They both look to their relationships to create chaos and emotional intensity, I think, to make them feel like they are still alive and still existing and still relevant. And that's what led to their very troubled relationship, which only lasted about a year.
Some people say that the real winner in this trial is Johnny Depp's lawyer, Camille Vasquez. What is it about her style and her talent and her skill, to be honest, that has managed to win the sort of admiration, I guess, of so many?
Ms. Vasquez's skill is in making herself very personable. Lawyers aren't trained this way. We're trained to think in a very definitive way, to look for black and white, to present the evidence. But what she has done is shown a very personal side to Johnny Depp. All the allegations or speculation as to her relationship with Johnny Depp, I think, is just her trying to show the jury that Johnny Depp is not a scary person. He's not someone that you need to shy away from. She's fine putting her arm on his shoulder. She's fine sitting next to him or joking with him. And to the extent that that affected the jury's decision making, I think it was very well planned.
And have we actually ever seen anything quite like this? I mean, what is this case comparable to A, and the decision actually to go to trial. I mean, when you think about defamation lawsuits, obviously happens all the time. One person settles, there's usually some kind of a negotiation. That decision to actually be willing to take this all the way to a public trial is quite a bold one.
Yeah, and I think that Johnny Depp never really intended to win this defamation trial. He had already lost a defamation trial that he brought in the UK against the paper for publishing a statement that he was a wife beater. And in the United Kingdom, it's a lot easier to make a defamation case than it is in the United States because there's no First Amendment protection. So his bringing this case in the United States, I think, was more about mobilizing his public, improving his public persona, getting all of his people to start posting on social media so that he can go back to Hollywood and say, see, I still demand attention. I can still sell a movie. Right now I have 18 million people who are following me actively, in addition to all the other people who are on my side.
That's certainly an interesting viewpoint. All right, David Glass, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, still to come here on One World, securing Nigeria's future as the nation prepares for next year's election. I'll speak to a leading businessman about what the country needs to grow and thrive.
Across Africa, businesses are working together like never before. All new on CNN, Connecting Africa.
Join me, Eleni Jokas, as we crisscross the continent to show you how new connections are revolutionizing commerce in Africa.
This month, Connecting Africa through technology.
The fintech space in Nigeria and across Africa is really growing very well.
Connecting Africa on CNN, in association with Afreximbank.
Afghan women are afraid that this is the beginning of your efforts to erase them from the workspace.
It's not clear. Even if we appear with the burqa, maybe they will say that women's voices are forbidden.
Did you ever imagine that you would be prevented from going to school?
Girls' education is fundamental to the dignity of Afghan life.
Do you believe that young girls will be allowed to go to school here in Afghanistan?
I'm Paula Newton in Ottawa, and this is CNN.
Hello and welcome back to One World. Let's catch up on the headlines. In Brazil, the death toll now stands at more than 100 after heavy rain triggered flooding and mudslides in the country's northeast. This is the fourth major flooding event to hit Brazil in the last 5 months, according to Reuters. Officials warn that more floods and landslides are very likely. In 2 weeks, the UK will begin flying asylum seekers to Rwanda, where their cases will be processed. The migrants will reportedly be housed in hotels and apartments. The Home Office says that anyone who arrived in the UK illegally after the 1st of January could be relocated. Human rights groups say the plan is ill-conceived, impractical and inhumane. The UK is getting ready to celebrate the longest reigning monarch in British history. Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee kicks off on Thursday, marking her 70 years on the throne. Events are set to take place over the 4-day holiday. Nigeria is gearing up for presidential elections next year. Just last week, the main opposition party picked its candidate, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. And the ruling APC party will make its choice at a convention next week. Whoever succeeds the current president, Muhammadu Buhari, will face a wide range of national emergencies. Here's what's at stake in Nigeria. The country is dealing with mounting insecurity from the Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast to kidnappings for ransom plaguing the northwest. Endemic corruption also poses a threat to the government's stability. The next president will also have to navigate Africa's biggest economy through very, very uncertain times with, for example, high inflation, slow growth and a shrinking labor market as well. All right, time now for the exchange and a deeper look at Nigeria's economic development. Earlier, I spoke with Tony Elumelu, one of the country's most famous businessmen and philanthropists. I asked him what it will take to help the continent prosper, Africa as a whole, and the international community's role in that. So the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, did a virtual visit of Nigeria just last year where he talked about the importance of trade, good governance, economic development. Does the U.S. have a role in creating a much more economically empowered Africa? And if so, what do you think that role should be?
Good to meet you, Zen. Yes, I think that the United States has a key role to play in helping to catalyze economic development and prosperity in Nigeria and in Africa. The tie between Nigeria, Africa, and the U.S. is very strong. Every kid grows up in Nigeria and Africa, aspiring to behave like an American, a strong cultural influence here. And I believe that our political leadership differs a lot to also America, and it would be nice for America to realize its role in its role and influence in Africa, and that can be galvanized more positively in helping to catalyze development.
Yeah, so the government has a key role, as you point out, in creating an enabling environment. But when you think about right now the ease of doing business in Nigeria, I mean, it's still quite problematic, from inflation to the energy crisis to unemployment. I mean, there are all sorts of headwinds for young entrepreneurs. What do you think the role of the private sector is in creating a much more business-friendly environment for dynamic and creative young entrepreneurs to thrive?
I speak from experience. At the Tony Elumelu Foundation, which my family founded in 2010, we help to catalyze and encourage young African, young Nigerians to go into entrepreneurship, to embrace entrepreneurship as a way of helping themselves, their communities, and the country. And one of the areas I believe the private sector must play a role, and government in part also, would be to help to catalyze luck, to help to democratize luck, to help share part of their prosperity with these young upcoming Africans and Nigerians, so that all of us collectively can do more in helping to eradicate poverty, in helping to drive youth employment, in helping to catalyze employment in a manner and scale that one single corporate cannot do.
Nigeria has a general election in about 9 or so months from now. What do you think the country needs from new leadership in order to unleash the country's full economic potential?
We need to deal with insecurity in the country. There's so much private capital looking for the right investment destination in the world. That capital will not come to Nigeria if we do not fix insecurity in the country. We need to make sure that we help improve on infrastructure. Crude oil production has gone down because of theft in the Niger Delta area. We need to fix this. There's so much happening in the world in terms of oil price has gone up, but my country is not benefiting from this because of
but when you say, Tony, that we need to fix the issue when it comes to crude oil theft, I mean, you've spoken about this a lot. You've been very, very adamant about that. What specifically should the government be doing now?
So it's a major issue, and I believe that the government should continue to emphasize this so that we can. The oil is our commonwealth in the country, and how can a few people be stealing this commonwealth of the country, plundering it? It's not good. And I believe this must be keeping government up at night. So we need to engage our security agency to do what they should do to help protect the integrity and territory of the country by making sure that things like this don't happen. Broad daylight is totally unacceptable.
As you know, climate change is a huge problem for Africa because Africa contributed the least to climate change, but it's set to bear the brunt of it. You've invested heavily in Nigeria's energy sector. How long before renewable sources of energy become a major player in Nigeria's power sector?
You know, Zen, the truth is we are suffering so much. Access to electricity, as I said, in Nigeria is extremely poor. Carbon emission in this part of the world, totally less than 2%. So we are not even at the point where we should be talking of this. However, it's important as members of the global community that the climate change effect is real, but we think that there should be a different kind of conversation that should allow developing countries, especially Nigeria, other African countries, to come up a bit. So there should be a deal to encourage, support countries, because if we don't renewable to a large extent, it's limited in terms of capability or capacity to support the energy consumption that we need in this part of the world to even come to the basic level that others have experienced in other parts of the world.
Tony, I think the issue is that because the climate crisis is an emergency right now, a lot of the coastal communities across Africa are going to suffer. They're already suffering, actually, but they're going to suffer even more. They're going to pay a very, very high price because of climate change. We're talking about villages being destroyed, livelihoods and lives being lost at an ever-increasing rapid rate. So, given what you're saying, what sort of assistance can the international community provide to Africa, to Nigeria especially, since you're obviously from Nigeria, to make sure that you can meet the climate crisis as fully equipped and as prepared as you can possibly be?
You know, Zen, we are suffering the impact of this climate crisis. We're receiving much more than we're contributing or have contributed to it. And that, to me, is a major conversation that should be held. In the area of energy financing, we need a deal that supports African institutions and African economies to address this issue. We need to see support in the area of, again, as I said, access to electricity is so critical to Africa, and funding, cutting funding in the energy area to Africa now is like stifling the entire continent to Nigeria. So we need to see in Nigeria a deal that prioritizes and encourages and supports energy funding.
Tony Elumelu, thank you so much.
Thank you, Zen.
Just hours from now, Ukraine's national football team will take on Scotland in a World Cup qualifier with a lot on the line. Not only are the players fighting for a spot in the FIFA tournament, they're also hoping to lift the spirits of their weary countrymen who have been fighting a war for more than 3 months now. CNN's Alex Thomas joins us live now from Glasgow. So Alex, after so many months of losses for Ukraine, I'm talking about obviously on the battlefield, this is one area where Ukrainians are desperately hoping for a win.
Yeah, Zain, it was the Real Madrid boss, Carlo Ancelotti, who once described football as the most important of the less important things in the world. And that's almost the perfect slogan for this World Cup qualifier. There's so much more at stake, certainly back in Ukraine right now, than just a game of football. But as you can probably hear and see a bit behind me, the atmosphere in a sunny Glasgow as Wednesday's gone on is getting more and more like any other game. We've got Ukrainian fans here looking forward to a football match that, if they were to win it, would put the team within one more victory of a place at Qatar 2022. And in Ukraine's history as an independent nation since the breakup of the former Soviet Union, they've only got to the men's FIFA World Cup once in their history, during a golden age with a star player like Andrei Shevchenko back in 2006. But you can tell that their emotions are very much split between what's going on back home and the pressure of representing their country in the current circumstances. Take a listen to one of their key star players, Manchester City's Alexander Zinchenko.
Ще я мрію про те, щоб війна закінчилась. Але якщо кажучи про футбол, то у нас теж є мрія. У нас є своя мрія. Мрія поїхати на чемпіонат світу. Та подарувати ці емоції українцям. В цей непростий час. Тому що вони цього заслуговують.
You can see the emotions Zinchenko battling with there. Zayn, he was actually applauded out of the press conference, which, as you know, is very rare for journalists to do when we're meant to be impartial and just report the story on the facts. But even Ukraine's opponents, Scotland, understand there's more at stake than just a game of sport. And they've had mixed feelings, although they say they also want to win to reach the World Cup. The men's team in this country hasn't done that since 1998, even further back than Ukraine. They've certainly rolled out the welcome mat for Ukraine as much as they have, agreeing to delay this match after the war broke out back in Ukraine. So this is a delayed game. Some Ukrainian refugees have even settled here in Scotland, and some of them have been given free tickets to the game as well. But once the whistle goes for the start of the match, it'll just be two teams desperately trying to win a game of football. Zayn?
Yeah, but you brought up a good point about the fact that, you know, Scots are actually thinking very carefully about how they're approaching this match as well. There is so much emotion at stake here. Alex Thomas, live for us. Thanks so much. India has been rocked by the sudden death of an Indian star singer Krishna Kumar Kunath, known as KK. Tributes are pouring in for the 53-year-old. He passed away last night after performing a concert at a college in Kolkata. KK shot to fame after the 1999 release of his first solo album called Pal. His songs were used in hundreds of Bollywood films like this one. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi tweeted about KK's death, saying, "We will always remember him through his songs." Thank you so much for watching One World. I'm Zain Asher. African Voices is up next. You're watching CNN.
Almost all carbon emissions come from industries that shape our world. But at Standard Chartered, we believe progress doesn't have to cost our planet. That's why we're mobilizing $300 billion to help our clients change the way they operate, accelerating the transition to a net zero world. Because where others see problems, we see potential. We're Standard Chartered, and we're here for good.
Mainland China tolerates no signs of dissent whatsoever.
Are you anticipating dozens of people being prosecuted? Hundreds? Thousands?
Stories of mass internment camps have been trickling out.
Do you think you'll see your husband again?
This period of mourning is taking place in a real climate of fear.
The humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in front of our eyes here.
This is one of the cells? Come on in here.
We're flying over ISIS front lines. This is the only protection we have.
Nerves are still very much on edge. Firefighters have been battling this blaze for weeks.
What do you say to people who question climate change?
We need to do something now.
Ivan Watson, CNN.
our mission here at CNN and journalists. The news comes first. That's when your heart beats a little bit faster.
More breaking news that we are following right now.
You really work as hard as you can, getting the facts.
We're learning more about our alleged plot.
It is critically important.
To our viewers in the United States and around the world, welcome to the Situation Room. We have breaking news.
Out front tonight, a potential breakthrough in treating coronavirus.
We've gotten very little help from the federal government.
Could all this spending lead to a bigger economic crisis? One of our viewers saw you last night on the show. She says she's going to pay your rent this month. Shut up. I want to go now to an incredible story of survival. Would you do it all again in terms of being a nurse, knowing that that could put you at risk for this?
I want to help people more than I ever have.
Erin Burnett out front on CNN.
African Voices Changemakers, in association with Glow Unlimited.
We're revisiting some of the best moments from recent episodes of African Voices Changemakers. In KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, we spent a few days with a rowing legend who's giving back to his community through the sport.
That's it, that's it. It's not just about winning, it's about participating. And often the chap who just makes it into my Change Life team has had the hardest struggle to get there and has the biggest story to tell. So from my side, it's just about touching lives, giving people an opportunity to learn about what it takes to be successful, like the hard work, the discipline, the focus, goal setting. Good luck today. You must go into the channel. I use paddling through my Change Life Academy to empower the youth. I am Martin Dreyer, a paddler from South Africa, and I am a change maker.
Martin Dreyer is a local legend in the paddling community. But the humble athlete doesn't say much about his accolades. Even his hardware is stored away haphazardly in boxes. These days, he's not so much in the river as he is on the riverbanks, training the next top paddlers through his KwaZulu-Natal-based Change Your Life Academy.
My City Change Life Academy identifies sporting talent in the Valley of a Thousand Hills and gives that talent a support structure to be great.
Martin!
Hey Martin, how's it going? Today marks the start of a very busy week for his team of 44 Zulu paddlers. They will be competing in multiple races leading up to one huge event.
We're here today for the Inanda Dam to Durban. It's a seeding race for the Duzi, and that means that they will get hopefully on the front row, which is important at the start of the Duzi Canoe Marathon because there's over 1,000 people that paddle, and if you're stuck further back, you just got traffic to get through.
The Duzi Canoe Marathon is said to be the biggest canoe race in Africa and one of the world's most popular paddling events.
The race is steeped in history and integrally woven into the fabric of KwaZulu-Natal, and it is a South African sporting icon.
Founded in 1951, this prestigious river marathon is a 3-day, 120-kilometer race from Pietermaritzburg to Durban. Paddlers compete in singles or in groups up to 4. Martin is a 7-time champion and current record holder of the Duzi.
My life changed forever in that I stopped my professional sport and put all my energy into my Change Life Academy because just the person I am, I wanted it to be a success. I started identifying talent and then gave that talent a support structure to be good. And in that Duzi in 2009, all 10 came in the top 36.
Ever since, Martin's athletes have regularly placed in paddling events. Some have even gone on to become full-time professional athletes.
One of the very successful academy paddlers is Simon Koizem Tolo, and he was in Change Life for 6 years and did incredibly well and got a top 5 in the last Duzi, so much so that the sponsor of the Duzi formed a racing team, and he's one of 3 who has become a professional paddler. Being with Change Life was so grateful. It's been helping me a lot
and giving me the best equipment. Now I'm preparing for Duzi. I'm hoping to win the gold at Duzi.
Martin's Academy remains local to the Zulu community situated along the Valley of 1,000 Hills.
In order to make the academy sustainable, I don't take my athletes from different provinces and you've got transport issues and they take out of their home environment. My hub is around Nagle Dam, and there the guys walk to training. So it's probably like a 10-kilometer radius of this dam is where all this amazing talent comes from.
As the qualifier is coming to a close, Martin's eager to find out how they made out.
Hey, Jabulani. Yeah, Wampila. How did it go?
We did go well, but...
well done.
But otherwise, good race today, yeah.
Good race.
Next, we meet one woman who's proving art can be a path toward healing.
20,000 naira free bonus.
20,000 naira for free. Is your line blocked? Then move to Glow.
I'm reconnected.
Because we've all reconnected. And it's simple.
Just link your NIN by dialing *109#.
20,000 naira free bonus.
Free. No. And existing customers get 20,000 naira for free. Make the right call with Glow.
It's a mystery that gripped the world.
If you have Madeline, let her come home to her mummy, daddy, brother and sister.
A young girl's disappearance from a seaside resort.
Please give our little girl back.
15 years later, a major break.
Portuguese authorities have said that they have named a suspect.
CNN investigates.
So to be clear, the formal suspect is a convicted rapist and a known pedophile.
Missing Madeline McCann, Saturday.
What I like about my work is the freedom of it. The freedom that gives me to create whatever I feel like. Every time I create a work, I take small piece of me out, you know, like if it's a happiness, a sadness, or it goes into the work, you know, so I become lighter and lighter and lighter. I'm using my art to heal myself, to discover my worth, and to heal the universe. I am Lizette Chirim, visual artist from northern Mozambique, and I'm a change maker.
Lizette Chirim uses rich textiles, bold colors, and recycled materials to create mixed media masterpieces.
I began to collect all the items on the floor that I thought they would be useful. I picked up all the buttons, all the small metals.
Today she's going to the market to source new materials.
The market is called Giwa. I began to work with the Capulana because Capulana he brings lots of colors and there's a cultural value, nice material.
Lizette is known for her large fabric collages. She says her troubled past often influences her creations.
My work is the fruits of my childhood, you know, crying, beating, and missing my mom, and feeling lonely. It's reflected now in my work. It's like my work is the healing part of that, the pain I carried. This piece is, I call it the Book of Demand. When I went to meet my father embraced me, but suddenly he began to reject me because my stepmother, she rejected me. I said, okay, the human side of my family reject me, but the spiritual side, the spirits, my ancestors, they embrace me, they love me. So this is about my ancestral lineage. So our fathers and ancestors, they used to knit. So this is a continuation of, you know, the knitting, but now using the fabric. And to express my feelings about being rejected from the human side, but being loved and embraced and chosen by my ancestors. And it's my sketchbook.
Art came naturally to Lizette. but she says she didn't initially consider it as a career.
The first time I find out I was an artist was actually when I was working at aluminium company. I used to draw, images and funny things. And my boss at the time, he said to me that he believed that I'm an artist and I should check that out. I looked at myself and then I saw that I was surrounded by artists. I'm like, you know what? My boss is actually right.
In 2005, the visual artist moved her family from Mozambique to Cape Town to pursue her creative passions.
When I was in Cape Town, I came with so much energy.